Welcome to the Megillah Project.
One story, many angles.
Come learn with us.
I'm going to speak about the Book of Esther as comedy. The Book of Esther is the blueprint for Purim. It provides the reason to celebrate Purim and the guidelines for celebrating it. It says that Purim is to be celebrated with simcha u'mishteh. That's an unusual phrase. The word simcha means joyfulness, festivity, and it is associated with other holidays in the Bible. But mishteh means drinking parties, implying frivolous fun, and it is not associated with any other holiday. Purim is indeed a different kind of holiday. It is carnivalesque. It features raucous behavior, drunkenness, noise-making, masquerades, Purim Torah, that's funny skits and jokes, and general revelry. The point I want to make here is that the Book of Esther is also a blueprint for Purim's carnival-like celebration, and not only because of its many drinking parties. The carnivalesque tone of Purim is built into the Book of Esther. The Book of Esther is a comedy, a bawdy farce. It has all the hallmarks of comedy: exaggerations, improbable events and actions, ludicrous situations, comic misunderstandings, sexual innuendos, and cartoon characters. Trigger warning, there are references to sex in this presentation. Let's begin with King Ahasuerus, the ruler of the great Persian Empire. He is hardly the model of the sovereign of the most powerful empire in the world. When we first meet him, he has invited all his courtiers and officials to a drinking party, men only, with a never-ending supply of wine that lasts for 6 months. Who is minding the empire? To make matters worse, he wants to show off his queen to these drunken men. So he invites Vashti to join them, something that was totally unacceptable, actually indecent in Persian society, where women held their own parties separate from the men. Only dancing girls attended men's parties. Poor Vashti is in a no-win situation. If she comes, it is an embarrassment to herself and the king. If she refuses, she is disobeying a royal command. She refuses, and the king gets very angry, but he doesn't know what to do. Since this king seems never able to act on his own, he consults his advisors. Ostensibly looking to protect the king's reputation and dignity, they overreact, making a mountain out of a molehill. They tell him that Vashti has disrespected not only the king, but the entire empire, and that he should dismiss her and find a new queen, and this is over the top, issue a new edict to be published throughout the land saying that every husband should maintain authority over his household. If there was anyone in the empire who did not already know about the king's faux pas, they would surely know about it now. A while later, when the king's anger had receded, he thinks about Vashti and the decree against her. Worried that he might change his mind and reinstate Vashti, the advisors jump in with another preposterous suggestion. Have a Miss Persia beauty contest and make the winner the next queen. Actually, this is more than a beauty contest. The king is going to audition each candidate for one night, and the one who pleases him the most will get the crown. Needless to say, no real Persian king ever selected a queen in this manner. Ahasuerus, of course, automatically accepts the advisor's suggestions, and all the eligible women are brought into the harem. The women are readied for their audition with extensive and expensive beauty treatments. If you thought that 6 months was an exaggerated length of time for a party, note that the women have 12 months of beauty treatments, 6 months of oil of myrrh, and 6 months of perfumes and women's cosmetics. So now let's consider Haman, perhaps the most comic villain in all of literature. Haman is also a caricature. He's an egomaniac, fixated on getting maximum honor. Whenever he thinks he's being honored, when he's personally invited to a private royal party, he is elated. But a rebuff of his honor, when Mordecai refuses to bow to him or even to acknowledge his presence, makes him angry and depressed. His wife and friends suggest a way to publicly disgrace Mordecai, put up a stake to hang Mordecai on. And here comes another exaggerated number. The stake will be 50 cubits high, equivalent to 75 feet, or a 7-story building. No building in the Bible is that tall. Solomon's temple was only 30 cubits high. Imagine hoisting a person up on such a high stake, and who could recognize him from below? Haman also has starring roles in the 2 comic misunderstandings that are the highlights of the book, and he is the butt of the joke in both. In the first, Haman misunderstands the king, and in the second, the king misunderstands Haman. The first misunderstanding is well known. Haman goes to the king in the middle of the night. He's so eager he can't wait till morning to get permission to hang Mordecai on the stake. The king is having a sleepless night, so he asked his servants to read to him from the annals, where he found that Mordecai had saved his life but had never been rewarded. As usual, Ahasuerus needs advice. How should Mordecai be rewarded? At that moment, Haman enters, and immediately the king blurts out, "What should be done for the man whom the king wants to honor?" Well, of course, Haman cannot imagine that anyone but himself would deserve to be honored. So he invents a ceremony that will give him the greatest possible honor. Let the honoree be positioned in the main square, wearing a royal garment that the king wears, mounted upon the royal horse that the king rides, and let a high-ranking courtier proclaim, "This is what is done for the person whom the king wants to honor." What you need to understand is that to wear the king's garment and to sit on the king's horse is tantamount to becoming the king. Haman has designs on the throne. He wants to appear in public as the king. Does Ahasuerus, we might wonder, understand the significance of this ceremony? But the king does not miss a beat. "Terrific idea, Haman," he says. "You can be the high courtier to bestow this honor upon Mordecai." The second misunderstanding is more subtle and more devastating. It's also funnier. It takes place at the second private party, where the only guests are the king, Esther, and Haman. They were reclining on couches, as was the ancient custom. Esther has just accused Haman of plotting to kill her and her people. This so enrages the king that he jumps up and goes out of the garden. Meanwhile, Haman approaches the queen and leans over her couch to plead for his life. At that very moment, Ahasuerus re-enters the room and sees Haman falling on the queen's couch. The king says, "Would he really ravish the queen with me in the house?" Has Ahasuerus misunderstood Haman's intention? I think that our heretofore not too bright king is really being very clever. What is the king accusing Haman of? Not simply a sexual advance or a sexual assault. To have sex with the king's wife is an attempt to usurp the throne, as we see in 3 other cases in the Bible. When Abner lay with King Saul's concubine, when Absalom lay with King David's concubines, and when Adonijah requested David's almost concubine, Abishai. What makes this scene so delicious is that we know that Haman did not intend to have sex with the queen, and we also know how much Haman wants to be king. Ahasuerus is correct about Haman's deeper intentions, even as he misinterprets or pretends to misinterpret the scene before him. So the villain is caught, but for the wrong reason, or maybe it is for the right reason. In either case, all's well that ends well. Happy endings are another mark of comedy, and the book of Esther surely has a happy ending.